Hello, you ready to hear a bit more of Roald Dahl's The Twits? The silly Mr and Mrs Twit. Okay, right, before we do though, we need to get comfortable, get some wiggles out, make sure nobody's disturbing you. Say, everybody, shh, it's my time. 1 and 2, we know what to do. 3 and 4, we sit on the floor. 5 and 6, our legs we fix. 7 and 8, we sit up straight. 9 and 10, we're quiet again. Okay. Right, so we got to where Mr Twit had put hug-tight sticky glue onto the dead tree, hadn't we? And the roly-poly bird had said, "Don't go onto the tree!" But the birds didn't understand because they didn't speak his language. Should we carry on? Chapter 19. No bird pie for Mr Twit. You see. The next morning, when Mr Twit came out with his huge basket to snatch all the birds from the big dead tree, there wasn't a single one on it. They were all sitting on top of the monkey cage. The roly-poly bird was there as well, and Muggle Womp and his family were inside the cage, and the whole lot of them were laughing at Mr Twit. So they could understand what the roly-poly bird was saying. Look at them all on there. I think Mr Twit's going to be rather cross. Still, no more bird pie for Mr Twit. Mr Twit wasn't going to wait another week for his bird pie supper. He loved bird pie. It was his favourite meal. So that very same day he went after the birds again. This time he smeared all the top bars of the monkey cage with the sticky glue, as well as the branches of the big dead tree. "Now I'll get you, whichever one you sit on," he said. You see him up there sticking the glue on the bird cage. Oh, he's a meanie. The monkeys crouched inside the cage watching all of this, and later on, when the roly-poly bird came swooping in for an evening chat, they shouted, "Don't land on our cage, roly-poly bird! It's covered in sticky glue! So is the tree!" And that evening, as the sun went down and all the birds came in again to roost, the roly-poly bird flew round and round the monkey cage and the big dead tree, singing out his warning. "There's sticky stuff now on the cage and the tree. If you land on either, you'll never get free. So fly away, stand up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow in hot bird pie." Oh. Chapter 21. Mr and Mrs Twit go off to buy guns. Oh, we don't like that, do we? Look at them. The next morning, when Mr Twit came out with his huge basket, not a single bird was sitting on either the monkey cage or the big dead tree. They were all perched happily on the roof of Mr Twit's house. The roly-poly bird was up there as well, and the monkeys were in the cage, and a whole lot of them were hooting with laughter at Mr Twit. Oh, look at them all laughing. Can you spot the roly-poly bird? Where is it? There he is. And look, Mr Twit is super cross. Rah! Uh-oh. "I'll wipe that silly smile off your beaks," he screamed at the birds. "I'll get you next time, you filthy feathery frumps. I'll wring your necks, the whole lot of you, and have you bubbling in the pot for bird pie before this day is out." "How are you going to do that?" asked Mrs Twit, who had come outside to see what all the noise was about. "I won't have you smearing sticky glue all over the roof of our house." Mr Twit got very excited. "I've got a great idea," he cried. He didn't bother to keep his voice down because he didn't think the monkeys could understand. "We'll both go into town right away and buy a big gun each," he shouted. "How's that?" "Brilliant!" cried Mrs Twit, grinning and showing her long yellow teeth. "We'll buy those big shotguns that spray out 50 bullets or more with each bang." "Exactly," said Mr Twit. "Lock up the house while I go and make sure the monkeys are safely shut away." Mr Twit went over to the monkey cage. "Attention!" he barked in his fearsome monkey trainer's voice. "Upside down, all of you, and jump to it. One on top of the other. Quick! Get on with it, or you'll feel Mrs Twit's stick across your backsides." There they are, look, all upside down. Obediently, the poor monkeys stood on their hands and clambered one on top of the other, with Muggle Womp at the bottom and the smallest child at the very top. "Now stay there until we get back," Mr Twit ordered. "Don't you dare move. And don't overbalance. When we return in 2 or 3 hours' time, I shall expect to find you all in exactly the same position as you are now. You understand?" With that, Mr Twit marched away. Mrs Twit went with him, and the monkeys were left alone with the birds. Chapter 22. Muggle Womp has an idea. As soon as Mr and Mrs Twit had disappeared down the road, the monkeys all flipped back onto their feet the right way up. "Quick, get the key!" Muggle Womp called out to the roly-poly bird, who was still sitting on the roof of the house. "What key?" shouted the roly-poly bird. "The key to the door of our cage!" cried Muggle Womp. "It's hanging on a nail in the workshed. That's where he always puts it." The roly-poly bird flew down and came back with the key in his beak. Muggle Womp reached a hand through the bars of the cage and took the key. He put it in the lock and turned it. The door opened. All 4 monkeys leapt out together. "We are free!" they all cried. "Where shall we go, Dad? Where shall we hide?" "Don't get excited," said Muggle Womp. "Calm down, everybody. Before we escape from this beastly place, we have one very important thing to do." "What?" they asked. "We're going to turn those terrible twits upside down." "We're going to what?" they cried. "You must be joking, Dad." "I'm not joking," Muggle Womp said. "We're going to turn both Mr and Mrs Twit upside down with their legs in the air." "Don't be ridiculous," the roly-poly bird said. "How can we possibly turn those 2 maggoty old monsters upside down?" We can!" cried Muggle Womp. "We are going to make them stand on their heads for hours and hours, perhaps forever. Let them see what it feels like for a change." "How?" said the roly-poly bird. "Just tell me how." Muggle Womp laid his head on one side, and a tiny, thinking little smile touched the corners of his mouth. "Now and again," he said, "but not very often, I have a brilliant idea, and this one is one of them. Follow me, my friends, follow me." He scampered off towards the house, and the 3 other monkeys and the roly-poly bird went after him. "Buckets and paintbrushes!" cried Muggle Womp. "That's what we want. There are plenty in the workshed. Hurry up, everyone. Get a bucket and a paintbrush." Inside Mr Twit's workshed there was an enormous barrel of hug-tight sticky glue, the stuff he had used for catching birds. "Very buckets!" Muggle Womp ordered. "We are now going into the big house." Oh. Mrs Twit had hidden the key to the front door under the mat, and Muggle Womp had seen her doing it, so it was easy for them to get in. In they went, all 4 monkeys with their buckets of sticky glue. Then came the roly-poly bird flying in after them, with a bucket in his beak and a brush in his claw. You see them all. Chapter 23. The Great Glue Painting begins. "This is the living room," announced Muggle Womp. "The grand and glorious living room where those two faithful, frumptious freaks eat bird pie every week for supper." "Please don't mention bird pie again," said the roly-poly bird. "It gives me the shudders." "We mustn't waste time," cried Muggle Womp. Hurry up! Now, the first thing is, I want everyone to paint sticky glue all over the ceiling. Cover it all. Smear it every corner." "Over the ceiling?" they cried. "Why the ceiling?" "Never mind why," shouted Muggle Womp. "Just do it. Do as you're told and don't argue." "But how do we get up there?" they asked. "We can't reach." "Monkeys can reach anywhere," shouted Muggle Womp. He was in a frenzy of excitement now, waving his paintbrush and his bucket and leaping around all over the room. Come on, jump on the table, stand on the chairs, hop on each other's shoulders. Roly-poly, you can do it flying. Don't stand there gawping. We have to hurry. Don't you understand that? Those terrible twits will be back any moment, and this time they'll have guns. Get on with it, for heaven's sake, get on with it." And so the great glue painting of the ceiling began. All the other birds who had been sitting on the roof flew to help, carrying paintbrushes in their claws and beaks. There were buzzards, magpies, rooks, ravens, and many more. Everyone was splashing away like mad, and with so many helpers, the job was soon finished. Chapter 24. The carpet goes on the ceiling. "What now?" they all said, looking at Muggle Womp. "Ha-ha!" cried Muggle Womp. "Now for the fun! Now for the greatest upside-down trick of all time! Are you ready?" "We're ready," said the monkeys. "We're ready," said the birds. "Pull out the carpet," shouted Muggle Womp. "Pull this huge carpet out from under the furniture and stick it onto the ceiling." "On the ceiling?" cried one of the small monkeys. "But that's impossible, Dad." "I'll stick you onto the ceiling if you don't shut up," snapped Muggle Womp. "He's dotty," they cried. "He's balmy, he's batty, he's nutty, he's screwy, he's waggy," cried the roly-poly bird. "Poor old Muggles has gone off his womp at last." "Oh, do stop shouting such rubbish and give me a hand," said Muggle Womp, catching hold of one corner of the carpet. "Pull, you nitwits, pull!" The carpet was enormous. It covered the entire floor from wall to wall. It had a red and golden pattern on it. It is not easy to pull an enormous carpet off the floor when the room is full of tables and chairs. "Pull!" yelled Muggle Womp. "Pull, pull, pull!" He was like a demon, hopping round the room and telling everyone what to do. But you couldn't blame him. After months and months of standing on his head with his family, he couldn't wait for the time when the terrible Twit would be doing the same thing. At least, that's what he hoped. With the monkeys and birds all pulling and puffing, the carpet was dragged off the floor and finally hoisted up onto the ceiling. And there it stuck. All at once, the whole ceiling of the living room was carpeted in red and gold. Chapter 25. The furniture goes up. "Now the table! The big table!" shouted Muggle Womp. "Turn the table upside down and put a dollop of sticky glue on the bottom of each leg. Then we shall stick that onto the ceiling as well." Hoisting the huge table upside down onto the ceiling was not an easy job, but they managed it in the end. "Will it stay there?" they cried. "Is the glue strong enough to hold it up?" "It's the strongest glue in the world," said Muggle Womp. "It's the special bird-catching, bird-killing glue. for smearing on trees. Please, said the roly-poly bird, I have asked you before not to mention that subject. How would you like it if it was monkey pie they made every Wednesday and all your friends have been boiled up and I went on talking about it? I do beg your pardon, said Muggle Womp. I'm so excited I hardly know what I'm saying. Now the chairs. Do the same with the chairs, and all the chairs must be stuck upside down to the ceiling. And in the right places. Oh, do hurry up, everybody. Any moment now, those two filthy freaks are going to come rushing in with their guns. Oh, he is getting crazy, isn't he? The monkeys, with the birds helping them, put glue on the bottom of each chair leg and hoisted them up to the ceiling. Now the smaller tables, shouted Muggle Womp, and the big sofa, and the sideboard, and the lamps, and all the tiny little things, the ashtrays, the ornaments, and that beastly plastic gnome on the sideboard. Everything, absolutely everything, must be stuck to the ceiling. It's the sofa. It was terribly hard work. It was especially difficult to stick everything onto the ceiling in exactly the right place. But they got it done in the end. What now? Asked the roly-poly bird. He was out of breath and so tired he could hardly flap his wings. Now the pictures, cried Muggle Womp. Turn all the pictures upside down. And will one of you birds please fly out onto the road and watch to see when those frumptious freaks are coming back? I'll go, said the roly-poly bird. I'll sit on the telephone wire and keep guard. It'll give me a rest. That's the end of that for today. We'll read the last bit of the story tomorrow. And then it would be lovely if you could perhaps let your mummies and daddies know what sorts of things you would like to do next week. We've got to do some learning, but if there's anything you would like to do, or your mummies and daddies want to do, then drop us a little comment and we can do it. Bye bye.